So kids don't have coins anymore. Everything is digital. We used to always look at those. I knew what liberty was. We know what in God we trust means. E pluribus unum. That's Latin. What does it mean? Anybody?
From many, one.
Out of many, one. Or from many, one. That's right. So out of many states, one country. Out of many people, one people. And I was very inspired by Lord Monckton's presentation on our Constitution last year. Was anybody here for that?
Oh,
it was really good. And he closed with a wonderful, wonderful poem from a poem. And it was, sail on, O ship of state. Sail on, O Union, proud and great. Who said that? Does anyone know who said that? That's kind of tough. Longfellow. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And so, when I had the opportunity to show Lord Monckton around Boston a few days ago, I made sure that we went right into the house of Henry Longfellow, which was formerly Tory Row. This is where the wealthy loyalists lived. When the revolution came, they headed back to London. Washington moved in. So in the very same room that those lines were written, Washington had his headquarters. And what we happened to find was, unfortunately, that this very patriotic historic site is was now run by a social justice warrior. And she lectured us about, Longfellow may have had a gay friend in the 19th century. His son had a tattoo on his back. We saw that. We saw a detail of how his son was shot through the back in the Civil War. We heard very little about George Washington, and we heard nothing of the famous English visitor that came through, and that was Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens, back during those times in the 19th century, your poets, your writers, they were your rock stars. So Longfellow was like the rock star of America, and Dickens was certainly the same in England, and he read A Christmas Carol in that house, but they're not teaching that anymore. So when you think of a ship of state, sail on, O ship of state, for America, what ship comes to mind? Yes, Old Ironsides. Who toured Old Ironsides with us 4 or 5 years ago? Yes, we have a few veterans. Okay, so that was the second part of my secret plan with the British Lord. You see, the British Empire was won. They conquered 2/5 of the globe on ships such as that. So I knew if I could get Lord Monckton on that ship, I'm not going to give him the tour. He's going to give me a tour, because that's in his DNA. That's in his blood, and he knew all about that ship. He knew how the spars were done, how the sailors got up and down, and they even had some British cannon on the ship. And I wondered about that, and there was a female sailor on there, and she says, yeah, well, this ship actually did well against the British ships, and we just took their cannon fire as well as ours do.
But I repossessed the ship on behalf of Her Majesty.
Yes. He was well received. He was not the first British lord on that ship. 200 years ago, an even more famous lord, how to believe, a peer of the realm, and that was Lord Byron. Lord Byron was a great hero of Greece. He was a freedom fighter for Greek independence from the from Muslim Turks. And they have a Lord Byron Day every year in Greece. So anyway, what is the Union? Okay, we're going to learn about that today, a little bit about it. So the founders gave us 2 assignments in George Washington's farewell address. I always ask when I'm talking to great minds what they would have me read. So that great mind back there, John McManus, said, read George Washington's farewell address. There's a lot there. So we have to keep it free and we have to keep it together. If I got a glass of water, this is a bottle of Coke, it's plastic. But if I have a glass of water, and the glass is the Union, it's holding together, and the water is freedom. Suppose I drop it, the glass breaks. Does it matter if America is free if we can't keep it together? No, not really. So we have to keep it free, we have to keep it together. The Constitution helps us to do both. Okay, so, definition. What is our Union? 4 things. It's the stars on our flag. I find Rush Limbaugh was talking about the flag, and he said the blue part with the stars on it. Nobody under the age of like 80 has been taught that part of our flag is called the Union. John McManus, were you taught as a child that the blue part with the stars is called the Union?
Did I say that?
Were you taught that as a child? That the blue part of our flag with the stars...
No, I don't remember
is called the Union. Was anybody taught that here? That part of the flag is called the Union? Yeah, okay, great, great. How old are you? Yeah, okay, so some people a long time ago were taught that that's called the Union. So the states, the people together, the stars on our flag, it's also a term for, it's an older term for our country and our territory. Union. So, alrighty. So, okay. Let me see what I have here. A lot of things. Okay, there. Oh, no. Alrighty. So, if you came from another planet, and this is our founding document there, who's in charge?
We the people.
We the people, yes. We are sovereign. That's a lot of responsibility. We the people are sovereign. And who is the principal author of our Constitution? You should know that. Somebody should know that. Somebody want, yes. No. Declaration, yes. James Madison, very good. So, here is what Madison said. The people, the highest authority known to our system, for whom all our institutions spring and whom they depend, formed this. So, Lord Monckton gave a great speech yesterday about how the people, through their representatives, and how journalists were getting the news out. You know, they weren't supposed to tell people, but people were getting involved. And there was controversy, so these Federalist Papers were written. The Federalist Papers are basically a long tome about unions, about what keeps countries together and what does not. And what is America definitely not? We're a republic, not a democracy, right. So if we go all the way back to when they had democracy, there was a great philosopher called Socrates. And he was mentor to Plato, who was mentor to Aristotle. And Socrates actually had a direct experience with direct democracy. Does anyone know what that is? Yeah, so he was making a lot of sense. He was making people think, and they got together and they voted whether they should kill him or not. And they just, they were whipped into a frenzy. A crowd can be whipped into a frenzy, and they voted to kill Socrates with hemlock. Our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, did he ever have an experience with direct democracy? Did he have an experience with democracy? Yes, he did. He went to Pontius Pilate. Could Pilate find any fault in that man? That man was without sin. No, he didn't. So Pilate didn't want to have blood on his hands. What did he do? He went to the people and he said, you can vote. I will either free a known criminal, Barabbas, or I'll free this man who's without crime, without sin. Who did the crowd vote to free? Barabbas. See, that was democracy. So as a believing Christian, we know that had to happen. That was destined to happen. And thank God he died for our miserable sins on that cross. But nevertheless, democracy was one of the vehicles that put him on the cross. We are not a democracy. The founders feared democracy, and they wrote all about it in the Federalist. And who were the three authors of the Federalist Papers? See who knows. Yes?
Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and James Madison.
That's right. So let's read. Very good. That's good. Yes. Who wrote most of them?
James Madison.
I thought Hamilton. You could be right. Federalist 10 is against democracy. Federalist number 9 also. But basically, they're writing about union. What keeps a country together? All right. So, who has a copy of the Declaration of Independence?
Yes.
With them. All right. Who wants to be the super camper? Yes. Okay, reading in the opening lines of the Declaration of Independence, find me an example of union. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for what? One people, one. Very good. That's an example of union there. There is more. Okay, well, let's just look at the old parchment here. Yes, to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with another. There's the other, he's sitting right there. The crown, we are in the presence of the crown. And to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nations and nature's God, there we have God, and God we trust, entitle them a decent respect to the opinions of mankind, requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We who? That's right. We the people are sovereign. We're in charge. That all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to pursue these rights, secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from among the consent of the governed. That's right. So there it is again. So that's where the powers come from. There are rights, there are powers. A lot of times when people talk about states' rights, they really mean states' powers. It's good to know the difference between the two. Okay, so that's the Union and our Declaration of Independence. What also came at the time of the Declaration of Independence was, what was our first government called? Yeah? Yes? Yeah, is that the full title? I'm helping you out here. What's the full title of that document? Yes, the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union between the states. So perpetual union, there you have union again. They wanted it to last. However, it was a league of friendship, a firm league of friendship, each state retaining its sovereignty, freedom, and independence. Right? So it was almost like 13 different countries, and to the extent they were like different countries, they fought like different countries. They had different money. They could not enforce customs and duty on our ports. British ships were just coming back in there. No duties could be levied, and so we were too weak. And within the states, there was instability too. You guys went to see that, right? To Shays' Rebellion, right? Yes. That's right. So Daniel Shays, he couldn't get any higher justice here in Massachusetts. There was no Supreme Court at that time, and so he went to the right of rebellion, and he wanted to burn Boston to the ground. To a lot of us that have done business in the Boston State House, we kind of sympathize with Daniel Shays. I'm not saying I would ever do that, but I understand where he was coming from. But a lot of the founders after Shays' Rebellion, like George Washington, like James Madison, they knew that it was falling apart, that America was good, like a baby was going to die in its crib. So, so very good. So then, yes, so basically, what are the two responsibilities that the founders left us with? I'm going to repeat myself a number of times. We have to keep it free, and we have to keep it together, united as one. So, what is the opposite of union? There's union and division, right? So, by what way? Our liberties are attacked so many different ways. As many ways as a dog has fleas, our liberties are attacked. Union is only attacked one way: divide and conquer. Britain, I believe it's known as divide and rule, but that's the only way they can do it, is to divide. So, what is the extreme opposite of union? If you push it out far enough, so you've got division. We certainly have division here in the United States, and people are pushing that division on the left. If you push it far enough, what do you get to? Civil war. Yeah? Civil war. So we have to work to keep it together, because the left is pushing, and will push it that far. They will push it to civil war, and that's what's going on right now, unfortunately. Okay. And so, the part of the flag with the stars is called? Union. The Union. Oh, good. If I teach one thing today. Yes. Yes.
On the original Union flag that you showed us, this of course is the 13 states of the Confederation, but on the flag you first showed us, there were 51 stars. Why 51?
Oh, was there 51 on that flag? Oh, I don't know. You've got me. Wow, he's got me. Oh. There you go. So anyway, the Union, where did that originate? The Union originated from Washington's headquarters flag. The headquarters flag was just a Union. It was just the stars on a blue field. And then Betsy Ross got together. I guess they're saying Betsy Ross was a racist now. I don't know about that, but they're saying that. That's another thing about democracy. The mainstream news comes on and they yell every day that Trump is a racist. And now they did a poll. 80% of black folks in America think Trump is a racist. No specific examples. And 51%, a majority of white folks think he's a racist too, just from being screamed at every day without any examples. That's sort of, again, an example of democracy and the ills of democracy. They just keep screaming that. However, some leftist group did a study to see if racism was up or down in the 3 years he's been president. I don't know how you study that. And they found racism is actually down in the 3 years. From when Obama was president now, racism is down in the country from where it was. But you wouldn't know that from the news media, right? They're going to scream that, and hopefully maybe if they scream that enough, he won't get reelected. So that's democracy in action. So, all right, so the stripes on our flag. Does anyone know where the stripes came from? The stripes. Do you know where those came from? Yes.
I think the white stands for purity.
Yes, they gave them all meaning. But before that, there was this flag called the Grand Union, which had a Union Jack in the Union part. Yes?
The 13 colonies.
Yes, a happy coincidence. But before that, it was the flag of the British East India Company, which is pretty ironic because on December 16th of 1773, what did we do with a lot of the product of the British East India Company? What did we do?
You failed to put it in the teapot.
Yes, we failed to put it in the teapot. We dumped 90,000 pounds, some 45 tons of British East India tea into the harbor, and yet the flag that Betsy Ross sewed, those 13 stripes, they were arrayed exactly like that, and those started in the British East India Company. That's ironic. Okay.
You have environmental permits to put the tea in the harbor.
Yes. Oh my goodness, the green police would have got us back then, right? Rhode Island actually has a green police, and they have these green police cars with the green siren up on top of green lights. When Trump went to, what happened 75 years ago on the beaches of France? The British, we were allies with the British then, and the Canadians. What happened on the beaches of France 75 years ago? Right? Was anybody watching? Trump went over to commemorate that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it just broke through German forces and were able to...
D-Day.
Yeah.
The D-Day landings, right? So I was there, actually, some 30 years ago, and I was there with a friend, and she found this bone. You can still find shattered human bones in the shells. We were there on a leap tide, which is the highest high tide and lowest low tide. So we were there at the lowest low tide. And among the shells, you can still find bones of soldiers and sailors that were shattered up by those guns. The gun was called Hitler's buzzsaw. It was the MG-42, and that was a very mean gun. It would spit out 20 rounds a second. So if you're in that boat and the landing door comes down and that gun is aimed into the boat, it can just spray you into blood and bones and just shatter you. And so this is the bone of an unknown warrior, of an American. I look at it every day. So a true patriot would rather die than give up on his country. You would rather die. And you can look at any point in our American history. There are reasons now to give up on our country, just seeing what's going on. But a patriot would rather die than give up on his country. And I put this in a place every morning when I have my coffee to remind me of that when I start to complain. Like, I have a very liberal uncle who's a professor at a college. And he actually teaches people 2 generations to kind of hate this country. He gets very well paid. I've never been paid at all. I do it all voluntarily. My car is so old. Oh my goodness, we almost got in an accident in Harvard Square. We were debating something, and it's kind of funny. But I just look at this and I say, Tom, just stop complaining. You know, just do your job, Patriot. Okay, so our Star Spangled Banner. Another connection to Great Britain. Star Spangled Banner came from which war? Was our first war or second war of independence?
War.
Yes.
Younger students, are you awake? The War of 1812, also called our Second War of Independence. What was the name of the fort in Baltimore? Baltimore's been a lot in the news lately.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of rats down there. It's not being taken care of. Problem. Okay. Fort McHenry, and who was the name of the author of the Star Spangled Banner? Francis Scott Key. Okay. What famous American author of the 20th century was named after Francis Scott Key? Francis Scott Key. There's the name. F. Scott Fitzgerald. His real name was Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald. So Francis Scott Key went to negotiate the release of American soldiers being held on a British warship, and they said, well, you can just watch from the deck there. We're just going to totally shell this fort, and then tomorrow it's all going to be gone. It won't make any difference. And so he wrote the Star Spangled Banner from a warship. But who wrote the tune to the Star Spangled Banner? Yes. It was written in a British gentleman's club during our first War of Independence, and it was they wrote about, like Lord Byron, they liked Greece, so they wrote about, it was called To Anacreon in Heaven, and the tune was written at the Crown and Anchor Tavern in London, at the London Gentlemen's Club. They met from 1766 to 1792, and they actually had to hide it. And so I'm going to actually sing how the Star Spangled Banner was when it was part of this gentleman's club. It's called To Anacreon in Heaven. Oh my goodness. To Anacreon in heaven, where he sat in full glee, a few sons of harmony sent a petition that he their inspirer and patron would be when this answer arrived from the jolly old Grecian. Voice, fiddle, and flute, no longer be mute. I'll lend you my name and inspire you to boot. And besides, I'll instruct you like me to entwine the myrtle of Venus and Bacchus's vine. Bacchus was the god of drinking. So it was a gentleman's club, and they invited, one time they invited the Duchess of Devonshire, a lady, to come to this gentleman's club, and it offended some of the sensibilities of the gentlemen, and the club collapsed soon after that. It's an interesting note. So that's where our tune comes from. Isn't that ironic? So the stripes come from where? Stripes on our flag come from where? The British East India Company, and the tune from our Star Spangled Banners comes from this English gentleman's club, To Anacreon in Heaven. Some irony there. Okay, so, but basically, the Star Spangled Banner is about not giving up. Going back to this guy who got off the boat 75 years ago. Young guy, a lot younger than me, and he was blown to bits. Yes, God rest his soul. So, now, so what is the opposite of union again? Things that keep us together? Is division, and the extreme opposite of union is? Civil War, that's right. So, okay, now we're going to get to how we are divided. So, did anybody see our flag desecrated at a sporting event recently, a women's soccer game? Yeah? Megan, what's her last name? Yes. The star of the women's soccer team, after they won, they were picking up the flag to present the flag. This is the flag, this is the team of the United States of America. You have USA on the front, and she threw it down. And it looked like she tried to step on it, but she didn't. And so the country gives her that great opportunity to represent, and she hates the country. That's what's happening right now. Even if we teach this to Camp Constitution, even if, say, I'm really lucky, suppose like 100,000 people see this, I don't think they will. The American colleges and universities are now almost completely controlled by the liberal elite, and they believe they own the future. That's why a lot of the squad, the Democrats these days, they can sow division. They can preach against America, even though they have like a 9% approval rating, because they believe they're just getting the psyche ready for what's coming in the future. Even if Trump gets elected for another 4 years, it doesn't matter, because the colleges are all controlled that way, and I guess they are in Britain too. So, so there's going to be a big fight coming. So, okay, now here's a tough one. Why is the concept of hate speech an Orwellian assault on the First Amendment and free speech and on Christian speech? How is the concept of hate speech an assault on our union? That's tough. Does anybody know who George Orwell was? Yes.
George Orwell was the author of books like 1984 and
Very good. Very good, yes. So it's funny, on our trip, I said, so I was in London 30 years ago, and I said, what if I had knocked on your door 30 years ago, and I said, I'm the ghost of Christmas future. 30 years from now, you're going to see cameras and microphones on every street corner in London. He would probably tell me you've been reading too much Orwell. Orwell was right about that, and now we have this thing called hate speech, and a lot of Christian speech is becoming hate speech. So everything Orwell, he was like a prophet that he saw, what, 60, 70, 80 years ago is now coming true. And some people say that Orwell is like turning in his grave now. I don't think so. I think he's on a rotisserie. I think he's doing about 5,000 RPM. Like, that's how bad things are. Okay, so, oh Tom, you're just really going overboard there. They're not really attacking the union and free speech. Well, this is going to affect Lord Monckton directly because he lives in Scotland. So this is actually a recent article, 2 months old, for April 2019. Is Britain making Christianity a hate crime? When you hear that term hate crime, don't go along with it right there and then. It's either a crime or it's not, right? And here it is. How many are you a Catholic? Yeah, okay, good. Scotland's new hate crime bill would criminalize Catholics, the church has warned. A Catholic official in Scotland last week publicly raised the prospect that the faithful might soon be breaking the law if they profess church teaching on marriage and sexuality. Anthony Horan, director of the Catholic Parliamentary Office, warned politicians that the new hate crimes might entrap ordinary Catholics who dare to share church teaching, say, on same-sex marriage and transsexuality. And he said, in a climate of heightened sensitivity, there is a very real danger that expressing or even holding individual or collective opinions or beliefs will become a hate crime. He said in reference to the bill. We must guard against this and ensure freedom of expression, thought, conscience, and religion are protected. So the First Amendment, if you look on Wikipedia, we've been protected pretty well by the First Amendment, and hopefully it will protect us from this new phenomenon of hate crime. But that's attacking our union. So people like on the college campus, if you don't believe with that, you know, you're sent to sensitivity classes. And I've talked to some college students. In my college, Boston University, the first week of every year is like Green Week. You have to make sure you're going along with all the green lies. And then if you don't, then you have to get extra education because that's their religion, the green religion. Goodness, okay, how much time do I have? Okay, we're going to get it done. So, territory, yes, territory. Oh, Harvard, you have to stop at Harvard. We went through Harvard. So, Harvard, getting back before we get off the topic of our Lord, Veritas. What does that mean? The more Latin? Yes. Truth. Truth. Whose truth? What truth? The original slogan. And this is your alma mater. I mentioned you when we had our conversation and almost our car wreck at Harvard Square. Somehow you went into Harvard and you came out saved. You're still a saved man, a believing Christian. How did you do that, man?
By the grace of God.
He still believes in God. Harvard these days, it started out as Veritas Christo et Ecclesiae, which means the truth of Christ for his church. 1844, they just kicked Jesus out. Now it just says truth. Whose truth? What truth? And I think it's very hard to be a Christian at Harvard today. They replaced Jesus with Darwin and Karl Marx, and they've stayed there ever since. So we're going to replace it. Okay, so that's old Harvard. And all the other universities follow underneath Harvard. It's at the pinnacle, and so I'm just using that as an example. And the Mayflower Compact, of course, they got together as we the people, and they made a compact unto God, to themselves. King James was mentioned, and they claimed the power of the vote, as was claimed in the Massachusetts Charter. It was the only British colony which claimed the right to elect their own governors. And that's how they felt about it, the early Puritans. Okay, Lincoln. George Washington, yeah, he was a seed, a shining seed kind of guy. So Washington, get a little bit of Washington here. He thought the Union, he went around, he made, to keep the country together, get back to George here. To keep the country together, he went to every single state, he gave speeches, he gave addresses about our union, and that was what he was most concerned about in his farewell address. And Trump is doing the same thing. He's going around with his rallies, bringing the nation together. He did it on the 4th of July. He did it in his wonderful inaugural speech. The speech is in the United Nations. He asserts United States sovereignty and we the people in the United Nations. He says things that I never thought I would hear from a president of the United States. I really, I actually pray for his safety every day. And I'm kind of surprised when I wake up and he's still there. Yeah, praise the Lord. Actually, goodness, okay. And all right, so I was telling Lord Monson about this. So if we don't come together with our own union of we the people, they've got other unions. We got the UN, that Norman talked about, right? And they also have the North American Union. Lord Monson hadn't heard of it. Most Americans hadn't heard of it. They tried to create an EU for America. And of course, Britain's trying to get out of the EU. Brexit, right? They tried to do that to us about 15 years ago. John McManus was one of the champions. Hal Shurtleff was one of the champions in fighting that North American Union. And thank you for the work you guys did. Thank you so much. They're so modest, you never know. Lord Monson went into a lot of detail. He said, you talk to John McManus. He went through that fight. And so that was the flag they were going to have. America, Canada, Mexico. They were going to ram a superhighway to put all of the cheap Chinese-made goods through our countries, like that. And that was stopped. But one of the other factors was they were just going to totally open up the border. And that was done. And that wasn't done under Obama. That was done under George H.W. Bush. And Obama actually spoke against open borders, but he did that. Now, how does open borders affect our union, affect who we are? Anybody take a guess at that? When you come to America, like you come to any country, you're supposed to learn the language, English, you're supposed to learn our history, our traditions, and you take a test, and they test you for diseases and other things like that. And now we've got, and then you become American, no matter who you're from, e pluribus unum, which means what? Going back to e pluribus unum, out of many, one. And you meet, I've got friends from all around the world, Lord Monckton does too, and they're just like us. They might be a different race, they might be from a different country, but they have our traditions and so forth. Now, when they don't go through that, what you have is, and Washington warned about this, you have colonies of people that don't speak our language, and maybe they don't wish us well even, you know? Some of the Muslim communities, and we've seen acts of terror and so forth, and the same in Britain, you know, and perhaps they haven't gone through the process of immigration and naturalization as they should. We take, the other thing that it interferes with is, we're talking about illegal immigration all the time. What don't we talk about? Legal immigration. We let in 1 million a year, and everybody says, oh, I'm just for legal immigration. But that hasn't been debated, because the Democrats don't even believe at all in any type of, there should be a name, illegal immigrants. And Antifa, about a year ago, they had a parade, and sometimes the liberals are very honest, and they're chanting, no borders, no wall, no USA at all. No borders, no wall, no USA at all. And that's true. Without borders, everybody storms in. You do not have a country. In 5 minutes, okay, we're wrapping it up here. We're moving fast. Okay, so we've got to keep it free, and we have to keep it together, united, which is called our union. That's right. Absolutely. You guys are learning this. Okay. Well, I think last year I read a little bit of Trump, so this year I'll read from somebody who's even a little more popular than George Washington. What he said about that. First in war, first in peace, first in, last unnatural. First in the hearts of his countrymen. Okay, so what did he say about the Union? I got this from John McManus. He said, study that, Tom, study that well. I studied it, sir. I'm going to read a little bit of it now. I wish the John Birch Society has said so much about liberty and our threats to liberty, I wish they would do a little bit more about the Union, about what keeps us together and one people, and the divide and conquer strategy which is being used against us. And that's my prayer that that happens. So here's what George Washington said to us, to we the people, when he was parting. The unity of government which constitutes you one people is also now dear to you. It is justly so, for it is the main pillar in the edifice of your real independence, the support of your tranquility at home, your peace abroad, of your safety, prosperity, of that very liberty which you so highly prize. But it is easy to foresee from different causes, from different quarters, much pains will be taken, many artifices employed, to weaken your minds to the conviction of that truth. As this is the point of your political fortress against which the batteries of internal and external enemies will be most constantly and actively, though often covertly and insidiously, and means sneaky. And it is an infinite moment that you should properly estimate the immense value of your national union to your collective and individual happiness. So at that time, there were people like Camp Constitution. They were very conscious of their liberties, and so really, Washington didn't think that those were going to be attacked so much as what keeps them together. He was right. So, accustoming yourselves to think and speak of it as the palladium of your political safety. Palladium, that's a good word. That's what keeps a city safe. That is, for example, in the Tower of London, an example of a physical palladium are the crows. They have to be there. That's the palladium. They're keeping that tower safe, and I think they clip their wings so they can't fly away. Interesting. So he's saying our union is our palladium. Watching for its preservation with jealous anxiety, discountenancing whatever may suggest even a suspicion that it can be abandoned, indignantly frowning on the first dawning of every attempt to alienate any portion of our country from the rest. What are they trying to do now? They're trying to split us up. Men against women, black against white, and no differentiation between those who come here legally and love our country and the people that just march in here, you know, to divide us, right? With slight shades of difference, you have the same religion, manners, habits, political principles. You have common cause, fought and triumphed together. The independence and liberty you possess is the work of joint councils, joint efforts, common dangers, sufferings, and successes. We went through a lot to make this country, and that's how we came together. And the Army and Navy are still sources of union in this country and patriotism. We found a lot more patriotism on the USS Constitution than we did in that historic house, didn't we? Those soldiers and sailors, they still had the spirit. And what do they say on the USS Constitution? Huzzah! Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You guys learned all that. Forget all this, all right? These considerations, however powerfully they address themselves to your sensibility, are greatly outweighed by those which apply more immediately to your interests. Here, every portion of our country finds the most commanding motives for carefully guarding and preserving the Union of the whole. So that's my speech on the Union tonight. I hope you have a better feeling for it, and I hope you do the best to go out there and unite Americans.